TikTok's like this human trafficking, smuggling application right now that people don't actually understand. But that's how they're making their movements, using TikTok.
Do you think we should ban TikTok?
I think we should ban TikTok because it's a spy collection platform.
How are you getting this information, if you don't mind me asking?
I mean,
we were kind of talking about all the terrorists that are coming up through the southern border and maybe even the northern border. Mm-hmm. But you've been tracking these guys. You know they're coming across. We had spoken about how some of these organizations are becoming friendlies who in the past years have been kind of rivals or not friends with each other, grouping together to become a common enemy. You had brought up the fact that a lot of these organizations are now training in urban warfare overseas, which we had spoke offline about, that you thought that was going to become a threat to the embassies. Now here we are. Mm-hmm. And so let's start with how are these organizations and which ones are becoming allies?
Sure. Yeah. The really interesting thing is the terrorists have been coming together for a long time. We just really hadn't been collecting it because how the U.S. government works is all the terrorist groups are in a bucket, right? So this is ISIS. ISIS people work ISIS. This is Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda people work ISIS. This is Hamas. Really, no one worked Hamas. And nobody was working cross-functionally like, hey, how are these terrorists sharing monetary resources? How are they doing joint training? A really good example is now these Hamas attacks just happened in October, right? Well, a large number of the terrorists at that attack trained in southern Afghanistan. They were in Uruzgan and Kandahar at al-Qaeda camps in the months prior to the Hamas attack. So if we had been collecting on what's al-Qaeda doing in southern Afghanistan, why are all these Palestinian terrorists in Afghanistan? This is very strange. We might have been able to get ahead of an attack like that. But because we put them in buckets, nobody thinks Hamas would go to Afghanistan to train, right? Because they're like, well, they're not aligned with Al-Qaeda, and they're Shia and they're Iran. And people ignore the fact that, Al-Qaeda and Iran have been super close because it's Iran, in addition to Pakistan, where all the Al-Qaeda senior leaders stayed these last 20 years when we were hunting them or trying to hunt them, unsuccessfully inside Afghanistan, right? So the terrorists have been coming together. We've just failed to notice it. And then, we talk a lot about in Libya, Al-Qaeda and ISIS came together because they had a mutual enemy, which was the Libyan National Army. And actually, just a couple months ago, one of our most senior terrorists from the Benghazi attacks, his name is Hashim Abu Sidra, was detained in Libya. The interesting part is it hasn't made the U.S. press. But what's really interesting about him? At the time he was detained, he was the head of ISIS in Libya, and he was the head of the operational side of Al-Qaeda in Libya. So see how this is now against narratives, right? He was basically the operational head of two groups that you're told don't work together.
Whoa. Well, how are you getting this information, if you don't mind me asking?
I mean, we've been working in Libya for 9 years. We have obviously a lot of relationships. We are kind of the only ones who work Benghazi, so we actually have a lot of people even just proactively reach out to us now too and say, hey, here's what's happening. So he's detained. He's actually a forthcoming detainee. He's providing a lot of info. The really interesting part is, from what I'm hearing, is they're only focusing his detainee debriefings on ISIS. They're not at all discussing the Al-Qaeda side, which is fascinating because, when he did our Benghazi attacks, he was, of course, Al-Qaeda, and he was leading actually one of the big battalions of AQIM at our attacks. So it's kind of interesting to even see in a foreign country Al-Qaeda is being downplayed and how they're collecting and how they're talking about a terrorist.
Wow. Do you think the government has rectified that segmenting people into this is ISIS, this is Al-Qaeda, this is Taliban?
Of course
this
not.
Is Hamas. It's still compartmentalized.
100%. Man,
that's a real shame. Wow. Well, how are you tracking these guys coming up to the southern border?
Sure. So I think we should take a step back from the southern border, right? Because almost when they get to the border, it's too late.
Okay.
Because the border's wide open. So I think we should start where they're coming from or who's enabling them along the way, right? So the three key, I call exit points, are India, Turkey, and Iran, right? So basically, all these people are going to those locations. So like the Africans, they're coming up through Africa using TikTok, which is crazy. So the Chinese and the Africans are actually using TikTok, and it's routing them to the southern border. So TikTok's like this human trafficking, smuggling application right now that people don't actually understand. But that's how they're making their movements, using TikTok. So anyway, they're
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What do you mean they're making their movements through TikTok?
Yeah, so TikTok is telling them how to do the routing. So it's like, how do you get through this city? How do you get to this country? How do you cross this border? How do you get a visa to this country? Where do you catch a flight to get to South America? When you get to South America, what routes do you take? Where do you go to get aid or medical? Where like the friendly NGOs that'll assist you? Like all that type of stuff is inside and being used in TikTok, and they're using this as their routing feature.
Wow.
Almost like we would use like ATAC.
Yeah. Wow. Do you think we should, I mean, this has been recently in the news. Do you think we should ban TikTok?
I think we should ban TikTok because it's a spy collection platform. So I would never put TikTok on my phone. But I think focusing on TikTok when we have way bigger issues, I have a problem with, right? Because honestly, that's not our biggest issue right now, right? Our biggest issue is like close the damn border, right? It's not that TikTok's bringing them through the border, it's you're letting them through the border.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So yeah, so most terrorists are leaving from Turkey, India, and Iran. And the really interesting part is even in India, one of the planes basically through France. I don't know if you saw this in Paris. And Paris is like, who are all these random people on this plane? Like, why are they in our country? And the plane got like held on like the tarmac and everything because it was just a plane of illegals going to South America. So that's the one side of the problem. The other side of the problem is the countries in South America giving visas or just allowing these people in, right? So it's Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Panama. They're giving visas to all these people traveling in. And what a lot of people don't know is Ecuador allows Chinese citizens to come in without a visa. So all the Chinese, like the 6,000 % at the border, they came in to Ecuador and then came up because they don't even need to get a visa. Any Chinese person can go to Ecuador right now. So we need to stop these countries in Latin America from, first, we got to stop that policy, right? Like they need a visa from China. And second, we got to tell these countries, hey, you're getting aid from the US, you know, you're our southern neighbors. Like, why are you enabling this and allowing these people, which you know are coming to our border? So that's what we have to do while we're waiting for our own morons in our own government to like close the border in some way. At least if we could stop the pipeline farther down, it would help in some way.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the Darien Gap at all?
Yeah, remember we chatted about it last time.
Yeah.
And I saw that you had, my friend Rick, that's a good friend of his that came on your show.
Really?
Yeah.
Michael Yan?
Yep.
Do you know anything about what's going on down there with the NGOs and the Chinese and...
Well, I mean, it's kind of like what I said, like even when I said like the TikTok routing. So there's a lot of NGOs in place along these routes, right, to assist the migrants. But as you can imagine, their humanitarian assistance is also then giving these like the illegals and even some of the bad guys going through, it's benefiting them, right? Because now they're safe routing. Now they can do it quicker, right? It's almost like they have a cover, right? Because they almost are associated now with an NGO, which changes the situation. So the NGOs inherently then are helping to increase or helping to improve this rat line into the United States. So they're actually almost like working against us, even though they're trying to do the right thing and just help people on the way. But it's becoming, as you can imagine, it makes it easier and it makes more people want to go through because they know there's these security blankets along the way.
Do you think these NGOs are doing this on purpose, or do you think this is incompetence?
You know, I think it's a mix of things. I think a lot's incompetence. So, you know, even if you just look at the evacuation from Kabul, right? They say, oh, it's the most successful. We took out 120,000 people. We took out 120,000 of the wrong people, right? There's like 70,000 people. We don't know who they are. And they're there because there's these NGOs affiliated with State Department, right? And they wanted to save a bunch of humans. And they're like, come to the airport. You don't even need ID. Bring like an electricity bill. So it's almost like this white savior complex. I know that sounds really bad. And they just almost care about numbers, right? Then, hey, are we bringing in the right people? Are we taking care of the right people? Like, are these people dangerous to bring into our community? Like, they're not thinking through that, right? They just want to say, oh, yeah, we help 500 people, donors, give us more money. And it's almost like this broken system.
Yeah. Wow. When it comes to, we're talking about Chinese, flying into Ecuador, coming up. Are you more concerned about the Chinese than you are the terrorist organizations coming into this country? No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.